Chapter 4. We have to go up on wiring fatigue. The motoring lorries roll up after dark. We climb in it. It is a warm evening, and the twilight seems like a canopy under whose shelter we feel drawn together. Even the stingy Jaden gives me a cigarette and then a light. We stand jammed in together, shoulder to shoulder. There's no room to sit, but we do not expect that. Mueller is in a good mood for once. He's wearing his new boots. The engines drone, the lorries bump and rattle. The roads are worn and full of holes. We dare not show a light, so we lurch along and are often almost pitched out. That does not worry us, however. It can happen if it likes. A broken arm is better than a hole in the guts, and many a man would be thankful enough for such a chance of finding his home way again. Beside us stream the munition columns in long files. They are making the pace. They overtake us continually. We joke with them and they answer back. A wall becomes visible. It belongs to a house which lies on the side of the road. I suddenly prick up my ears. Am I deceived? Again, I hear distinctly the cackle of geese. A glance at Kaczynski, a glance from him to me. We understand one another. Cat, I hear some aspirations for the frying pan over there. He nods. It will be attached to when we come back. I have their number. Of course, Cat has their number. He knows all about every leg of goose within a radius of 15 miles. The lorries arrive at the artillery lines. The gun emplacements are camouflaged with bushes against aerial observation and look like a kind of military feast of the tabernacles. These branches might seem gay and cheerful were not cannon embowered there. The air becomes acrid with the smoke of the guns and the fog. The fumes of powder taste bitter on the tongue. The roar of guns makes our lorry stagger. The reverberations rolls raging away to the rear. Everything quakes. Our faces change imperceptibly. We are not, indeed, in the front line, but only in the reserves. Yet in every face can be read. This is the front. Now we are within its brace. It is not fear. Men who have been up as often as we have become thick skinned. Only the young recruits are agitated. Cat explains to them. That was a 12-inch. You can tell by the report. Now you'll hear the burst. But the muffled thud of the burst does not reach us. It's swallowed up in the general murmur of the front. Cat listens. There'll be a bombardment tonight. We all listen. The front is restless. The Tommies are firing already, says Crop. The shelling can be heard distinctly. It is the English batteries to the right of our section. They are beginning an hour too soon. According to us, they start punctually at 10 o'clock. What's got them? Says Mueller. Their clocks must be fast. There'll be a bombardment, I tell you. I can feel it in my bones. Cat shrugs his shoulders. 3 guns open fire close beside us. The burst of flame shoots across the fog. The guns roar and boom. We shiver and are glad to think that we shall be back in the huts early in the morning. Our faces are neither pale nor more flushed than usual. They are not more tense nor more flabby, and yet they are changed. We feel that in our blood a contact has shot home. That is no figure of speech, it is fact. It is the front, the consciousness of the front that makes this contact. The moment that the first shells whistle over and the air is rent with explosions, there's suddenly in our veins, in our hands, in our eyes, a tense waiting, a watching, a heightening alertness, a strange sharpening of the senses. The body, with one bound, is in full readiness. It often seems to me as though it were the vibrating, shuddering air that with a noiseless leap springs upon us, as though the front itself emitted an electric current which awakened unknown nerve centers. Every time it is the same. We start out for the front plain soldiers, either cheerful or gloomy, then come the first gun emplacements, and every word of our speech has a new ring. When Cat stands in front of the hut and says, there'll be a bombardment, that is merely his own opinion. But if he says it here, then the sentence has the sharpness of a bayonet in the moonlight. It cuts clean through it. It thrusts near and speaks to this unknown thing that has awakened in us. A dark meaning, There'll be a bombardment. Perhaps it is our inner and most secret life that shivers and falls on guard. To me, the front is a mysterious whirlpool. Though I am in still water far away from its center, I feel the whirl of the vortex sucking me slowly, irresistibly, inescapably into itself. From the earth, from the air, sustaining forces pour into us, mostly from the earth. To no man does the earth mean so much as to the soldier. When he presses himself down upon her long and powerfully, when he buries his face and his limbs deep in her from the fear of death by shell fire, then, as she is his only friend, his brother, his mother, he stifles his terror and he cries in her silence and her security. She shelters him from releases him from 10 seconds to live, to run, 10 seconds of life, receives him again and often forever. Earth, earth, earth! Earth with thy folds and hollows and holes, into which a man may fling himself and crouch down, in the spasm of terror, under the hailing of annihilation, and the bellowing death of the explosions. O earth, thou grant us the great resisting surge of new won life. Our being, almost utterly carried away by the fury of the storm, streams back through our hands from thee. And we, thy redeemed ones, bury ourselves in thee, and through the long minutes and a mute agony of hope, bite into thee with our lips. At the sound of the first droning of the shells, we rush back, in one part of our being 1,000 years. By the animal instinct that is awakened in us, we are led and protected. It is not conscious, it is far quicker, much more sure, less fallible than consciousness. One cannot explain it. A man is walking along with thought, walking along without thought or heed. Suddenly, he throws himself down on the ground, and a storm of fragments flies harmlessly over him. Yet he cannot remember either to have heard the shell coming or to have thought of flinging himself down. But he had not abandoned himself to the impulse. He would now be a heap of mangled flesh. It is this other, this second sight in us, that has thrown us to the ground and saved us, without our knowing how. If it were not so, there would not be one man alive from Flanders to the Vosges. We march up, moody or good tempered soldiers. We reach the zone where the front begins and become on the instant human animals. An indignant looking wood receives us. We pass by the soup kitchens. Under cover of the wood, we climb out. The lorries turn back. They are to collect us again in the morning before dawn. Mist and the smoke of guns lie breast high over the fields. The moon is shining. Along the road, troops file. Their helmets gleam softly in the moonlight. The heads of the rifles stand out above, the white mist, nodding heads, rocking barrels. Farther into the mist ends. Here the heads become figures, coats, trousers, and boots, appearing out of the mist as from a milky pool. They become a column. The column marches on straight ahead. The figures resolve themselves into a block. Individuals are no longer recognizable. The dark wedge presses onward, fantastically topped by the heads and the weapons, floating on the milky pool. A column, not men at all. Guns and munition wagons are moving along a crossroad. The backs of the horses shine in the moonlight. Their movements are beautiful. They toss their heads and their eyes gleam. The guns and the wagons float past the dim background of the moonlit landscape. The riders in their steel helmets resemble knights of a forgotten time. It is strangely beautiful and arresting. We push on to the pioneer dump. Some of us load our shoulders with pointed and twisted iron stakes. Others thrust smooth iron rods through rolls of wire and go off with them. The burdens are awkward and heavy. The ground becomes broken. From ahead come warning. Look out! Deep shell hole on the left! Mind, trenches! Our eyes peer out. Our feet and our sticks feel in front of us before they take the weight of the body. Suddenly the line halts. I bump my face against the roll of wire carried by a man in front and curse. There are some shell-smashed lorries in the road. Another order. Cigarettes and pipes out. We're near the line. In the meantime, it has become pitch dark. We skirt a small wood and then have the front line immediately before us. An uncertain red glow spreads along the skyline from one end to the other. It is in perpetual movement, punctuated with a burst of flame from the nozzle of the batteries. Balls of light rise up above it, silver and red spheres which explode and rain down in showers of red, white, and green stars. French rockets go up, which unfold a silk parachute to the air and drift slowly down. They light up everything as bright as day. Their light shines on us as we see our shadows sharply outlined on the ground. They hover for the space of a minute before they burn out. Immediately, fresh ones shoot up in the sky, and again, green, red, and blue stars. Bombardment, says Kat. The thunder of the gun swells to a single heavy roar and then breaks up again into separate explosions. The dry burst of the machine guns rattle. Above us, the air teems with invisible swift movements, with howls, pipings, and hisses. There are smaller shells, and amongst them, booming through the night like an organ, go the great coal boxes and the heavies. They have a hoarse, distant bellow like a rutting stag and make their way high above the howl and whistle of the smaller shells. It reminds me of the flocks of wild geese when I hear them. Last autumn, the wild geese flew day after day across the path of the shells. The searchlights begin to sweep the dark sky. They slide along it like gigantic tapering rulers. One of them pauses and quivers a little. Immediately, a second is beside him. A black insect is caught between them and tries to escape. The airman. He hesitates, is blinded, and falls. At regular intervals, we ram into the iron stakes. Two men hold a roll, and the other spool off the barbed wire. It is that awful stuff with close set, long spikes. I'm not used to unrolling it and tear my hand. After a few hours, it is done. But there is still some time before the lorries come. Most of us lie down and sleep. I try also, but it has turned too chilly. We know we are not far from the sea because we are constantly waked by the cold. Once I fall fast asleep. Then, waking suddenly with the start, I do not know where I am. I see the stars, I see the rockets, and for a moment have the impression that I have fallen asleep at a garden fete. I don't know whether it is morning or evening. I lie in the pale cradle of the twilight and listen for soft words which come, soft and near. Am I crying? I put my hand to my eyes. It is so fantastic. Am I a child? Smooth as skin. It lasts only a second. Then I recognize the silhouette of Kaczynski. The old veteran, he sits quietly and smokes his pipe. A covered pipe, of course. When he sees I'm awake, he says, "That gave you a fright. It was only a nose cap. It landed in the bushes over there." I sit up. I feel myself strangely alone. It's good Cat is there. He gazes thoughtfully at the front and says, "Mighty fine fireworks if they weren't so dangerous." One lands behind us. Some recruits jump up, terrified. A couple of minutes later, another one comes nearer this time. Cat knocks out his pipe. "We're in for it." Then it begins in earnest. We crawl away as well as we can in our haste. The next lands fair amongst us. Two fellows cry out. Green rockets shoot up on the skyline. Barrage. The mud flies high. Fragments whiz past. The crack of the gun is heard long after the roar of explosions. Beside us lies a fair-headed recruit in utter terror. He has buried his face in his hands. His helmet is fallen off. I fish hold of it and try to put it back on his head. He looks up, pushes the helmet off, and like a child creeps under my arm, his head close to my breast. The little shoulders heave, shoulders just like Kemmerich's. I let him be. So that the helmet should be of some use, I stick it on his behind. Not for a jest, but out of consideration, since that is his highest part. And though there's plenty of meat there, a shot in there can be damn painful. Besides, a man has to lie for months on his belly in the hospital, and afterwards he would be almost sure to have a limp. It's got someone pretty badly. Cries are heard between the explosions. At last it grows quiet. The fire has lifted over us and is now drooping on the reserves. We risk a look. Red rockets shoot up to the sky. Apparently, there's an attack coming. Where we are is still quiet. I sit up and shake the recruit by the shoulders. All over, kid. It's all right this time. He looks round him dazedly. You'll get used to it soon, I tell him. He sees his helmet and puts it on. Gradually, he comes to. Then suddenly, he turns fiery red and looks confused. Cautiously, he reaches his hand to his behind and looks at me dismally. I understand at once. Gun shy. That wasn't the reason I had stuck his helmet over it. That's no disgrace, I reassure him. Many's the man before he has put his pants full after the first bombardment. Go behind that bush there and throw your underpants away. Get along. He goes off. Things become quieter, but the cries do not cease. What's up, Albert? I ask. Couple of columns over there got it in the neck. The cries continue. It is not men, they cannot cry so terribly. Wounded horses, says Cat. It's unendurable. It's the moaning of the world, the martyred creation, wild with anguish, filled with terror and groaning. We're pale. Dietering stands up. God, for God's sake, shoot them! He is a farmer and very fond of horses. It gets under his skin. Then, as if deliberately, the fire dies down again. The screaming of the beast becomes louder. One can no longer distinguish whence in this now low, now quiet, silvery landscape it becomes ghostly, invisible. It is everywhere. Between heaven and earth, it rolls on immeasurably. Dietering raves and yells out, shoot them, can't you?